What if I told you that the reason your grocery bill has doubled, the reason you cannot afford a house, and the reason your government seems powerless to stop the bleeding has nothing to do with the president, the parliament, or even the Federal Reserve? What if the real decisions, the ones that actually determine the value of the money in your pocket, are made in a single bizarre building in Switzerland that looks like a nuclear power plant disguised as a boot? They call it the Bank for International Settlements, or the BIS. The official narrative says it is just a club where central bankers meet to drink coffee and discuss stability. But what if that is the greatest lie in modern economic history? What if this institution is actually the cockpit of a global financial machine designed to siphon wealth from the productive many to the financial few, all while operating under a legal shield that makes it untouchable by any court, police force, or government on Earth? We are talking about an entity that has survived world wars, funded regimes that history tries to forget, and is currently writing the code for the future of your digital money. You are about to see the receipt for the world's most expensive secret. But before we pull back the curtain on the central bank of central banks, I need to know who is ready to hear the unfiltered truth. Drop a comment below and tell me, where are you watching from, and do you trust your central bank? Hit that subscribe button because the algorithm hates this story, but you need to hear it. Let us decode the Tower of Basel.
To understand the trap we are in today, we have to go back to the crime scene, the year 1930. The world was messy. World War I was over, and Germany owed massive reparations. The global powers needed a neutral intermediary to handle the payments. So, they created the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. On paper, it was a boring administrative office, but in reality, it was a shield. The founders included Montagu Norman, the governor of the Bank of England, and Hjalmar Schacht, the president of the Reichsbank. These men were not just bankers, they were the architects of the era's financial order. And they enshrined one specific clause into the BIS charter that changes everything: total immunity. The BIS buildings are inviolable. No Swiss official, no police officer, no judge can enter without permission. Their documents are sealed. Their assets cannot be seized. They pay no taxes. Sound familiar? It should, because this is exactly how the modern shadow banking system operates today: offshore, opaque, and above the law. But here is where the history gets dark. As the clouds of World War II gathered, the BIS did not shut down. It did not pick a side. It stayed neutral. While soldiers were dying in the mud of Europe, the central bankers were meeting in Basel to ensure the financial machinery kept humming. The BIS accepted looted gold from the Nazi regime, gold stolen from occupied nations and victims of the Holocaust, and laundered it into Swiss francs so the war machine could buy raw materials. They claimed they were just following banking protocols. They claimed they were apolitical. Sound familiar? Think about the year 2008. Think about the massive banks that laundered cartel money or rigged the LIBOR interest rates. When they got caught, did they go to prison? No, they paid a fine, a cost of doing business, and claimed they were just providing liquidity to the market. The excuse has not changed in 80 years. The mechanism of detachment, separating the money from the morality, was perfected at the BIS. After the war, there were calls to dissolve the BIS. The Bretton Woods Conference in 1944 actually passed a resolution to liquidate it. They knew it was dangerous. They knew it was a tool that prioritized banking stability over human life. But the BIS did not die. It mutated. It convinced the new world powers that they needed a coordinator for the new global economy. They argued that politicians were too stupid, too short-sighted to manage money. They argued that monetary policy needed to be independent from democracy. And so the tower grew. Today, every 2 months, on a Sunday evening, the governors of the Federal Reserve, the ECB, the Bank of England, the Bank of Japan, and dozens of others arrive in Basel. They enter the tower. They leave their aides behind. They eat dinner. They talk. No minutes are released. No transcripts are public. These are the people who set the interest rates that determine if you can afford a mortgage. These are the people who decide if your savings account earns 5% or 0%. They tell us they are fighting inflation or stabilizing the economy. But looking at the history of 1930, looking at the looted gold, looking at the immunity, sound familiar? It feels less like a bank and more like a separate state, a state that does not answer to you. And in the next section, we are going to look at the weapon they use. It is not a gun. It is not a bomb. It is a formula, a boring mathematical formula that controls the destiny of nations.
You might think the Federal Reserve is the most powerful financial institution on Earth. You might think Jerome Powell or Christine Lagarde holds the steering wheel. You would be wrong. The Federal Reserve is just the franchise manager. The BIS is corporate headquarters. How do they control the franchise managers? They do not give direct orders. That would be too obvious. Instead, they use a mechanism so complex, so boring, and so technical that 99% of journalists fall asleep trying to read it. It is called the Basel Accords. This is the twist. The conspiracy is not men in a smoke-filled room laughing at the poor. It is men in a sterile room writing capital requirement standards. The BIS hosts the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision. This committee sets the rules for how much money banks need to keep in reserve. It sounds prudent, right? Safety first? Wrong. By tweaking these risk weightings, the BIS can effectively turn off the flow of credit to entire sectors of the global economy or open the floodgates to others. If the BIS decides that lending to small businesses carries a 100% risk weight, banks have to hold huge amounts of expensive capital to make those loans, so they stop lending to you. If the BIS decides that buying government debt carries a 0% risk weight, banks can buy trillions of dollars of government bonds without holding any capital against it. Do you see what just happened? This mechanism artificially incentivizes banks to fund the government and starve the private sector. It creates the moral hazard that fuels the massive sovereign debt bubbles we see today. They rigged the game so the house always has funding, and the players, the entrepreneurs, the workers have to fight for scraps. This is the unseen hand. This is why the rich get access to cheap credit,
while you pay 25% on a credit card. It is not an accident of the free market. It is a design feature of the Basel Accords. But the Accords are just the current mechanism. They are building something new, something far more terrifying than capital requirements. They are building a cage, a digital cage that will trap every currency on Earth inside a single network. You have heard of CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, but you have not heard about the mother brain that will connect them all. You will not believe the name of the project they are testing right now. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi dystopia, and the receipt for this project proves that cash is not just dying, it is being murdered.
Welcome to the belly of the beast. We need to dissect the financial mechanics of this deep state, because if you do not understand how they rob you, you cannot stop it. Let us break down the two pillars of BIS control: the rigged casino, which is the risk-weighted assets framework, and the panopticon, known as the unified ledger. First, let us look at the numbers. They are shocking. The global derivatives market, which is bets on bets on bets, is estimated at over $1 quadrillion in notional value. That is more than 10 times the GDP of the entire world. How is this allowed? How can banks like Deutsche Bank or JP Morgan hold exposure that dwarfs the economy of the countries they operate in? Because of the BIS risk-weighted asset rules. The BIS allows banks to use their own internal models to calculate risk. This is like letting a student grade their own exam. A bank can hold billions in complex derivatives, but if their mathematical model says the risk is low, the BIS rules say they barely need to keep any cash in the vault to back it up. But if you want a loan to open a bakery, that is classified as high risk. The bank has to hold 8% capital against that. In the run-up to the 2008 crash, thanks to Basel II rules, major banks were leveraged at ratios of 30-1 or higher. That means for every $30 of gambling money, they only had $1 of real money. When the housing market sneezed, the banks caught the plague. The BIS did not prevent the crash. Their rules incentivized the fragility. And what happened after 2008? They introduced Basel III. They claimed it would fix the system. Under Basel III, sovereign debt, which is government bonds, is still treated as a risk-free asset. This is the mechanism of parasitic finance. By telling global banks that government debt is risk-free, the BIS ensures an endless demand for government borrowing. This allows politicians to spend without limit, running up deficits, creating inflation that steals the value of your labor. The banks get guaranteed returns, the politicians get to buy votes with printed money, and you get the inflation bill. It is an engineered illusion, a closed loop of debt that bypasses the real economy entirely. Now, let us move to the future. This is urgent. The BIS has published blueprints for what they call the unified ledger. Right now, money moves slowly. If you send money from New York to Tokyo, it goes through correspondent banks, SWIFT, and takes days. It is inefficient. The BIS solution is to tokenize everything. They want to turn central bank money and commercial bank money, like your deposits, into digital tokens that live on a single programmable ledger shared by all central banks. According to a 2021 BIS survey, 90% of central banks are exploring central bank digital currencies. This is not a theory. It is a rollout. Why is the unified ledger dangerous? Interoperability is code for centralization. Currently, if the US wants to sanction you, they can. But if you have cash or gold or use a different network, you have options.
The unified ledger creates a single router for global money. The BIS sets the API standards. The BIS sets the data requirements. Project Icebreaker, Project mBridge. These are real BIS projects testing cross-border payments. Project mBridge, a BIS collaboration with China and the UAE, successfully transacted over $22 million in real-value cross-border digital currency pilots in just 6 weeks. The danger is not just surveillance, it's programmability. On a unified ledger, money is not just a store of value, it is code. It can be programmed with logic. For example, this money can only be spent on food, not fuel. Or this money expires in 30 days to stimulate the economy. Or even, this money cannot be transferred to an unapproved wallet. This destroys the fundamental concept of money as a bearer asset. It turns money into a voucher issued by the state contingent on your behavior.
The BIS Headquarters Agreement, specifically Article 24, grants their officials immunity from arrest or imprisonment and immunity from the seizure of their personal baggage. Why does a banker need immunity from baggage seizure? What are they carrying? When you combine the legal immunity of the BIS with the technical omnipotence of the unified ledger, you get a terrifying result. A group of unelected technocrats whom you cannot vote out and cannot sue, controlling the on and off switch for global commerce. They call it frictionless finance. I call it the prison of convenience. They're selling you convenience, instant settlement, cheaper fees, but the price is your monetary sovereignty. The price is privacy. The price is the ability to transact freely without a third party approving the trade. This is the ultimate expansion of the tower. The physical tower in Basel is just concrete. The unified ledger is a digital tower that encompasses the entire planet. It is the end of financial privacy forever. They are creating a system where every transaction is visible, trackable, and potentially blockable by a central algorithm. Imagine a world where your ability to buy a train ticket depends on your carbon footprint score calculated in real time on the unified ledger. Imagine a world where your savings account creates a negative interest rate automatically to force you to spend. This is not conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy fact, detailed in their own white papers under titles like The Future of the Monetary System.
We are standing on the precipice of a new era. The system built in 1930 was about controlling gold. The system built in 2008 was about controlling debt. The system being built today is about controlling you. The stakes have never been higher because the technology has never been faster. In 1930, it took days to move gold. In the age of the unified ledger, your financial existence can be deleted in a millisecond. The BIS operates on the philosophy of borrowed time. They keep the debt bubble expanding, they keep the liquidity flowing, they keep the illusion alive, hoping that they can transition to the digital control grid before the current fiat system collapses under its own weight. Denial is comfortable. It is easy to think they would not do that, or that is too crazy. But remember the looted gold. Remember the 2008 bailouts. Remember the immunity. These institutions were not built to protect you. They were built to protect the system from you. They were built to ensure that when the music stops, they are the ones holding the chairs, and you are the one holding the bag. The Tower of Basel stands silent in Switzerland. It does not have a sign. It does not welcome visitors. It sits there, an opaque monolith, casting a shadow over every wallet in the world. But now, You see it. Now you know the mechanism. Knowledge is the only asset they cannot seize. Skepticism is the only currency they cannot devalue. So I have to ask you one final question. Are we wiser now, or are we just walking the same path as 1930, only this time in better suits and with digital chains? If you refuse to be a passive victim of this financial engineering, if you want to understand the game so you can position yourself and your family to survive the transition, you need to subscribe to this channel. We do not just read the news here, we decode the signal. Share this video, break the algorithm, wake someone up. I am your host. This is our channel. And remember, if you do not hold the keys, it is not your money.